Good afternoon, students. Here we start with embryology lecture of development of esophagus. So in the embryology lecture of the development of the esophagus, first if we draw, this is the foregut, and at its caudal end we show a fusiform dilatation. We show a fusiform dilatation at its caudal end. Cranial end, ventral and dorsal border of the foregut. Here, this is the foregut. In the ventral border, we show a laryngotracheal diverticulum initially in the form of a groove. So over here, we show laryngotracheal diverticulum. This we have discussed in the first lecture yesterday regarding the general considerations of the development of alimentary system. So this is the laryngotracheal diverticulum, or the laryngotracheal, rather tube, which will grow caudal wise, caudal in the caudal segment, it will grow caudal direction, in the caudal direction and forwards. This laryngotracheal diverticulum initially, the groove which is converted into diverticulum, which will grow downwards in the form of a tube, and in the caudal direction and forward direction here, it will then bifurcate in this manner. These are the two bifurcations of the lower end of laryngotracheal tube. Now this entire laryngotracheal tube, initially it is diverticulum, initially it is a groove, then diverticulum, then it is converted into tube, and this will result in development of larynx, trachea and the two lung buds. It is basically an offshoot from ventral portion of the foregut. Now the esophagus, the portion of the foregut, rather the portion of the foregut below the laryngotracheal diverticulum, which is called postlaryngeal, the caudal portion or the postlaryngeal portion of the foregut, will lead to development of esophagus, this fusiform dilatation as stomach, and lower part, proximal portion of the duodenum, and lower part it will develop into proximal portion of duodenum. These three structures will develop from the postlaryngeal portion of the foregut: esophagus, stomach and duodenum. Now the esophagus is the gut tube, the portion of foregut which will extend from cranial to caudal margin. Its cranial margin, the cephalic margin, will be just at the lower end of this laryngotracheal groove or diverticulum. So this laryngotracheal groove or diverticulum, its caudal margin, the caudal margin of laryngotracheal groove or diverticulum will serve as the starting point of development of esophagus. So this much is the entire esophagus. So it is a part of a narrow tube of the foregut in the postlaryngeal portion of the foregut, starting from the caudal margin of the laryngotracheal groove till the proximal border, where my finger is there, proximal border of fusiform dilatation at its lower end, at its caudal end. This fusiform dilatation in future will lead to development of stomach. So from here till here, this much portion will be the development of esophagus. Very clear? Now, in front of esophagus, we know the laryngotracheal tube. In front of laryngotracheal tube, there will be presence of pericardial sac, and along with pericardial sac, this is the pericardial sac or pericardial cavity, there will be the heart tube. So ventral to the developing esophagus, ventral to the postlaryngeal part of the foregut, there will be pericardial sac and the heart tube. And in between pericardial sac and heart tube and this esophagus, there is laryngotracheal tube. Now lower end, the lower end of the ventral border of the esophagus, this is the ventral border, this is the dorsal border of the esophagus. So ventrally we know these relations, but in the lower part of esophagus, where my hand is there, across its ventral border there will be presence of the septum transversum. So here ventrally there will be presence of septum transversum. This structure is called septum transversum. So the lower part of esophagus across its ventral border is septum transversum, which is developing. Why these two structures we have considered and why they are important coming up? Before that, dorsally, dorsal border of this esophagus, this is the dorsal border of esophagus, there will be presence of dorsal mesentery. So here there will be presence of dorsal mesentery, which will connect the dorsal border of the esophagus with that of the posterior abdominal wall. So therefore, this structure will be known as dorsal mesentery of the esophagus. Then on each side, this is the developing esophagus. On either side of esophagus, there will be, in the embryonic stage, there will be two coelomic ducts. So lateral, the two coelomic ducts, right and left, they will cross the esophagus across its lateral borders, right and left lateral border. And these coelomic ducts are nothing but they will connect superiorly, upper portion, the pericardial cavity, pericardial sac or pericardial cavity, with that of the caudal portion, the peritoneal coelom. So connecting pericardial cavity in the cephalic region, not cephalic region, but rather superior portion with that of the peritoneal cavity in the inferior region, there are two coelomic ducts. And these two coelomic ducts will always be present on either side of the esophagus. The portion of foregut which will lead to development of esophagus on its either side. And I would recommend you to search for the embryology videos of our channel, in which I have discussed elaborately regarding the development of coelomic ducts. Please refer to those videos of development of coelomic ducts, and then it will be very clear regarding this region about the relationship of coelomic ducts which are on either side of developing esophagus. Now, coming back to this point, pericardial cavity including the heart tube and septum transversum. Gradually, initially first, the esophagus is of shorter dimension. But gradually, the pericardial sac and the heart tube and the septum transversum, there will be descent of these two structures. The heart will descend and septum transversum will also descend and elongate. As a result of these two structures, gradually as they descend and elongate, this esophagus will also increase in size. It will increase in length. So that is the important point regarding the development of esophagus. Now we come to the inner structure of esophagus. Basically the esophagus, the lining epithelium, the mucous membrane of esophagus, the entire mucous membrane, if I draw with blue color, the entire mucous membrane of this esophagus is initially, the lining epithelium is ciliated columnar epithelium. After some time, it will change into simple columnar epithelium. So initially it is ciliated columnar epithelium. After some time, it will change into simple columnar epithelium, and finally, it will then become non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. And this transformation of epithelium during its development is called metaplasia. So by the process of metaplasia, the final epithelium of the esophagus will be non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, which will be developed from endoderm. Then comes the surrounding wall. The entire wall of the esophagus, as it consists of muscular tissue as well as connective tissue. So the muscles which are present, the muscular layer which is present in the esophagus and its connective tissue layers, they will develop from splanchno-pleuric mesoderm. Please note down. So therefore, the splanchno-pleuric mesoderm will lead to the development of, here the orange color I am drawing, this splanchno-pleuric mesoderm will lead to development of its muscular layers and connective tissue layers of the esophagus. That is very important point. Now, after considering the development of the esophagus, equally important is what are the anomalies of the esophagus, developmental anomalies of the esophagus, which is routinely asked in 1 mark question answer or in MCQs. Please note down and please try and understand. They are very interesting. The congenital anomalies of the esophagus will be 3. Those 3 anomalies, if I write down over here, the congenital anomalies, The first will be, let us consider the first one, tracheoesophageal fistula. Now what is tracheoesophageal fistula? Abnormal communication between esophagus and trachea is called tracheoesophageal fistula. Now try and understand this concept. There will be presence of tracheoesophageal septum. Yes, there is presence of tracheoesophageal septum in between laryngotracheal tube and esophagus. That means this is our tracheoesophageal septum. Now if I put color here, you will understand this is the entire tracheoesophageal septum. So here, this is the tracheoesophageal septum. And we shall mark this as the tracheoesophageal septum. Now always note down, this septum is present between laryngotracheal tube and esophagus, and it will always grow caudocranially. Note down, it will grow caudocranially, that means it will grow in this direction. From caudal end to cranial end. Now in this anomaly, tracheoesophageal fistula, what happens is that in some cases the tracheoesophageal septum, instead of developing from caudal to cranial direction, which is its normal development, it will develop in reverse direction. That means it will take its development in a reverse manner. That means it will develop in this direction, craniocaudally. So in those cases, in those abnormal cases when the tracheoesophageal septum, when it develops from cranial to caudal direction, at that time the inferior portion here, this inferior portion of tracheoesophageal septum will not develop. And when it will not develop, the inferior portion of tracheoesophageal septum, that is the caudal portion of tracheoesophageal septum, when it doesn't develop, in those cases when it develops craniocaudally, if the caudal portion of tracheoesophageal septum does not develop, then there will be abnormal communication between esophagus and the lower end of trachea at its bifurcation. And this abnormal communication between the esophagus, that is in the caudal portion of esophagus, with the bifurcation of trachea is known as tracheoesophageal fistula. This is very important. Now, very rarely, these cases are very rare, what I am going to explain it to you. Sometimes the tracheoesophageal septum will grow in a slanting, oblique direction, in such a way, obliquely and backwards, in such a way that it will separate. Sometimes the esophagus is completely separate from upper part of foregut, and we know that above the esophagus, the upper part of the foregut will develop into pharynx. So those are very rare cases when, because the tracheoesophageal septum grows obliquely, downwards, backwards, there will be complete separation of esophagus and the pharynx. Very rare. Now this is about tracheoesophageal fistula. Then we come to, I hope it is visible here. So we come to second very important, interesting anomaly, esophageal atresia. It is called esophageal atresia. What happens will be, in esophageal atresia, there will be proliferation of, if I show it in this direction, there will be abnormal proliferation of the lining epithelial cells of the esophagus. So the lining epithelial cells of esophagus, in this, if I show it this level, the lining epithelial cells will show abnormal proliferation. And because of this abnormal proliferation, there will be constant narrowing of the lumen. And because of constant narrowing of lumen and because of abnormal growth, abnormal proliferation of the lining epithelium of the esophagus, there will be a point of time when the lumen of esophagus will be blocked. The lumen will be obliterated. There will be no lumen left in the esophagus. The lumen is completely obliterated because of abnormal proliferation of the lining epithelial cells of esophagus. And because of this esophageal atresia, in embryonic stage, in the fetal stage, there will be a very important anomaly because of esophageal atresia, in which the fetus will have hydramnios. And this hydramnios is nothing but excess of collection of liquor amnii in excess of 2 liters. That is excess of collection beyond 2 liters. The liquor amnii, or it is called amniotic fluid, when it is collected beyond 2 liters, it is called hydramnios. And what are the cases when you get hydramnios in the fetus or in the newborn? Maybe cases of esophageal atresia as well as anencephaly. These are 1 mark question answers or MCQs. So because of esophageal atresia, there may be occurrence of hydramnios because the esophagus, because in the fetus having esophageal atresia, in its intraembryonic stage, the fetus is unable to swallow the amniotic fluid. Because the fetus is unable to swallow amniotic fluid, the amniotic fluid will keep on collecting in excess. As it keeps on collecting in excess, the condition becomes hydramnios. Now, the third anomaly. It is called cardiospasm, or it will be known as echalasia. Now, this cardiospasm is related to this junction. And in future, this junction where esophagus opens in stomach, this junction will be known as cardioesophageal junction. So this particular junction is cardioesophageal junction. That is a future junction between esophagus and the cardiac end of the stomach. Now here, what happens basically is because of neuromuscular incoordination. Remember, neuromuscular incoordination, what happens will be during peristalsis, when the peristaltic wave reaches here, this junction, there will be complete neuromuscular incoordination, as a result of which there will be improper dilatation of this segment, the cardioesophageal junction. This junction may not dilate properly, as a result of which the structure which is present proximal to this junction will dilate. This is called cardiospasm because of neuromuscular incoordination occurring at the level of junction between esophagus and cardiac end of stomach, at that level. What is the reason of this neuromuscular incoordination? What is the reason of this cardiospasm in which there will be improper dilatation of this junction when the peristaltic wave reaches here? The only reason is congenital agenesis of myenteric cells. Remember, myenteric neurons, myenteric cells, that is myenteric neurons, as well as the Meissner, submucous plexus of Meissner neurons. So, congenital absence of myenteric plexus, which is also known as myenteric plexus of Auerbach, AUERBACH''S. So, congenital absence of neurons which are present in myenteric plexus of Auerbach as well as submucous plexus of Meissner. In these two plexuses which are present in its muscular wall as well as in the mucosal compartment and connective tissue compartment, that means in the esophageal walls itself, these two plexuses are present. And because of congenital agenesis or congenital absence of the neurons present in these two plexuses, that is myenteric plexus of Auerbach and submucous plexus of Meissner, because of their congenital agenesis or congenital absence, there will be complete neuromuscular incoordination at the level of junction between esophagus and cardiac end of stomach. And therefore, that neuromuscular incoordination will result in cardiospasm, or it is called echalasia. So it is called cardiospasm. This is the third anomaly of the esophagus. With this, we conclude our lecture of the development of esophagus and its congenital anomalies. Thank you very much.